We're all set up. Good afternoon. Thank you very much for attending. We have 4 councillors here, so we are quorum. Correct. Receive apologies of absence.
Yeah, so we have apologies from Councillor Lucy Shires. I'm also assuming we have apologies from Pierre Boutikofer, but I haven't heard anything, but I'm assuming he's not well.
Okay, thank you for that. The minutes, everybody's seen the minutes?
So just to confirm, Councillor Georgie Perry-Warnes is an independent non-aligned member, so she's no longer a member of the committee. Sorry, yes, that's my mistake. So it's overlooked. It needs to be updated on ModernGov. So in her place would normally be Nigel Pearce, but in my absence due to sickness last week, I didn't notify him of his requirement for attendance.
There aren't many minutes, so I've signed them unless any member wishes to raise any. Thank you very much. Actions arising from the minutes?
That's purely for you members, and if you have anything to raise.
Yeah. Items of urgent business.
None that I'm aware of.
Declarations of interest. Parish and district members register of interest and parish officer register of gifts and hospitalities is the first item.
Just to note that I spoke to Councillor Andrew Brown earlier, and he asked for an update on where we were with getting register of interest forms live on the council website. I did say that I would chase that up with IT, and we'll get a written response once we know the answer to that question.
Thank you.
Quite correct, Mr. Chairman. I can confirm we've had that discussion.
Thank you.
So please, we can follow that later on in the agenda, possibly, can we?
Yeah, of course, yeah.
Yeah.
So members are asked at this stage to declare, well, we've done all that. Okay, parish members are reminded that the parish and district members register of interest and officer registry gifts and hospitality are available for inspection when it's up and running. Is that correct?
So we do have hard copies of those in Democratic Services. I was just saying that we are looking to produce an online form to complete those in the future, hopefully ready for the next election. And Andrew is just looking for an update as when that would go live, but we'll get that update when we can.
Is everybody content with that?
Yeah,
I think
it's a reminder anyway to members generally.
Okay, thank you. Item 8, excerpts of the annual monitoring officer's report. To receive and note report.
Thank you. At the GRAP committee, I presented my annual monitoring officer's report. I thought it would be helpful to extract those parts of that report that relate specifically to the work of the Standards Committee. I don't propose to read everything I've written, but in summary, this council adopted the model code of conduct. I've provided some information in regard to last year about how many code of conduct complaints I received, and that covers district, parish and town councils. Again, most of those complaints, as has been the case in previous years, relate to alleged bullying and disrespect. I've put a little something in the report about the procedure, and also have advised members that our independent person has reached the end of his tenure, so we are looking to recruit 2 independent persons to take over the role that he has been providing. There's the additional information in this extract that was provided to the GRAC committee, but I'm happy to take any questions in regard to it. I think one thing that I did mention at the GRAC committee was that it may be of interest. There's some redacted code matters in here that sets out the sorts of complaints we've received, the types of allegation. But there's quite a large number of complaints which are councillor upon councillor complaints. There's also, it doesn't necessarily reflect how many possible councillor upon councillor complaints there are, because sometimes a councillor will identify themselves as Mr. or Mrs. rather than councillor such and such complaining about councillor such and such. And there's also, if you like, some councils where there are more complaints than other councils. So, for example, on the monitoring officer report extract from the 1st of April 21 to the 31st of March 22, I believe there are 6 complaints that relate to Sheringham, 5 that relate to Cromer, and 2 that relate to Catfield. Now, this doesn't mean that the councillors at those particular councils aren't behaving appropriately. Sometimes there are tit for tat type complaints, and it may sometimes identify that there are potentially particular problems at that council or a particular issue at that council. So that's the summary of those of my monitoring officer report extract. So I'm happy to take any questions.
I'll go, Nigel, I think was just first, and then Andrew.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I pick up the nature of the complaints and the prevalence of the bullying, harassment, disrespect, failure to treat people with dignity and respect, and bullying and dismissive behaviour. They are all of a kind of same ilk in terms of they are traits of behaviour one upon another in a group that you would perhaps expect to have a general understanding of the kind of behaviours that we would expect. And I just kind of look at the resource implications that kind of go into these, because there's a lot of them. And I just wonder whether the fact that there are so many of that particular ilk, whether there is more that we can do, or that there is perhaps a more proactive stance that we might be able to take in regard to some additional form of training or guidance that might curb some of this. Because I think what we're dealing with here is just the kind of statistical kind of presentation of what we see, but actually on the ground, particularly when I go to town and parish councils, and you can pick up these dynamics. We've all done that, I think, and we can see the disruptive effect it has on the transaction of business. So I think that then there's another side to this as well, which is the kind of harm that some councillors feel, and that puts them off. So that's a disincentive to become engaged in local democracy. So I think there are 3 areas that kind of come to my mind, that perhaps there's more that could be done. And I appreciate all of this is in the kind of wider setting of how society behaves one upon another and so on, and social media is probably mixed in here as well. But I just asked that question really about whether we can do more. And as the monitoring officer said, not all town and parish councils feature here. I mean, we've got what, 120 something?
Yeah.
And we've got a smattering here. I think you probably mentioned those that I could count on one hand. So if we were to give some perhaps more targeted support, let's call it support, towards those councils where they seem to have a problem, I wonder if we might be able to kind of reduce some of this, and perhaps there'll be benefits in those other areas, like the transaction of business, like keeping people engaged and on board. Because there's many parish councils that struggle to get the numbers. And so I think there are some things that could be gained here. This isn't just about reducing this 2 or 3 pages down to 1 page for us. This is about that wider benefit. I'll leave that thought with you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank you very much. I was, yes, would you like to, I was going to ask if NALC has a role here.
Actually, that's one of the points that I have noted down. I think the first thing that I would respond to Councillor Dixon is that these behaviours, they're alleged complaints, and the vast majority result in no further action. So that does not support any kind of poor behaviour at a particular parish council or town council, but it's a town or parish council where we're getting a particularly large amount of complaints. You're absolutely right. This has got a big resource impact. You may be interested to know that when people complain, especially if they feel strongly about something, they will send in their code of conduct complaint form, but it can sometimes come with, say, 30 pages or more to support their strong views, and this all takes time. Of course, one thing that is set in legislation is that people do have a right to complain about councillor conduct. So we don't want to do anything that would restrict that right that they do have. But it is of note that a lot of the complaints that come to us are councillor upon councillor complaints. I think in regards to, for example, myself becoming involved, that may be problematic because I'm the person that looks at any complaint that comes here. But as you've correctly identified, Sarah Bristow, who works for NALC now, may be in a good position to liaise with these councils who are subject to a lot of complaints. One thing that I have considered that maybe members may be interested in is, as Councillor Dixon has identified the amount of resource that this must take, is the possibility of doing some data extraction to find out how much it actually has, say, cost us in the last year to deal with code of conduct complaints, and perhaps put that information on our website in the same place where people can get a form to make their code of conduct complaints. I just wonder, it's for something for members to consider, whether someone may think twice about whether they wish to use public money resources in resolving it that way, or whether there is another way to deal with it.
You'd like to come back?
I mean, I think that's a useful metric that you might be able to kind of use. But I just, while you were talking, I was just thinking through, a lot of these are around perceptions rather than actuals. And I think that's what you're kind of almost demonstrating when you kind of say no further action taken, because I think the substance of the issue might have been around a perception, or it might have been around something actual, but it was so minor and perhaps not intentional that it wouldn't be deserving of any further further action. So I wonder if there isn't a way in which perhaps some kind of early intervention. Well, I think you want to try and set people's expectations at the right level to begin with. And I think when people come onto a council, they probably do need some training about obviously what's expected in the code of behavior. But there are some things which almost fall into what I would call the rough and tumble category. And I'm not suggesting that the rough and tumble is acceptable. I'm just simply saying that when we come into a debating chamber, there are different views. And sometimes people will have different ways of expressing those views. And when we're talking about town and parish councils, they don't get anything like the training that we do. So I just wonder whether when something like this occurs, or maybe there is even a pattern beginning, whether there isn't something that can be done to say at an early sort of informal intervention that might be able to kind of set those expectations and set those concerns to one side, or to lower them so that they're less likely to result in a run of complaints, and therefore reduce the resource and the implications on them. So I just wonder whether there's something that we could do more in that way. And you're quite right. We don't want to stop people from making complaints where they are justified, but I think maybe a little bit more about, well, where is that line then? You know, where is that line? And maybe before we actually get pen committed to paper and the 30 pages attached to it, I wonder if there might be something that might be put in there, a kind of an early stage, informal stage. I don't know. I'm just thinking very laterally here and very freely, because I think there is a win here to be had, but quite how we might achieve that, I don't know. I do believe we need to do something about it, but quite what is open to discussion, I think.
I think it might be helpful, members may already be aware, but there is almost like a screening process, which is an assessment of whether we take further action. So whether I appoint an investigator to conduct a full investigation, or whether it's, if you like, some words of advice. But the general test is something of the, amongst other things, is whether it's capable of amounting to a breach, in which case there would be no further action. But there are also those matters where, if it is capable of amounting to a breach, it would be of such a low level that it's not worth the resources of an investigation. So in one sense, we have got somewhat of a screening mechanism by completing those assessments. I don't know whether there could be, in some ways as well, sometimes people can complain, but it's not actually about member conduct. It's about something they're not happy about, how that parish or town council has behaved, in which case they're informed that, that isn't within my remit to deal with that.
Got the application up and running, haven't they? The complaint up and running. And I just wonder if there might be a scope to have something that might just kind of go in front of that.
Would we be interfering with the chairman and the clerk's role? Is there a necessity, well, not something to advise that the chair of the parish council or the clerk could get involved at an earlier stage before it rises up to of course, unless it's about them, but all I'd say is perhaps there is a role of having a cup of tea with each of the and in a soft manner, perhaps dealing with it early on before it escalates.
I think that could cause its own problems in one sense. Sometimes parish and town councils try to look at member conduct themselves, but the legislation is very clear. It needs to come to the district council. However, I do support the member of NALC perhaps getting involved. They're possibly a good link between the district and the parish and town councils and have got a lot of expertise.
Andrew, sorry, I'm aware that I've kept you waiting.
That's okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, we learned yesterday in the town and parish council forum that there are different codes in operation depending on which particular type of council you're dealing with. So I'm guessing that the sort of common denominator across the codes is the Nolan principles, which are germane probably to each and every code. So the codes are a bit anachronistic in that respect. It seems to me that perhaps some primary legislation would be needed to rationalise it and standardise it across. I don't know whether that's appropriate or not. One other option may be for a parish council from another area to intervene in the way that perhaps an independent police force would look at the activity in another police force at a very basic level before it comes to the council. I don't know, but I agree with Councillor Dixon. There should be some kind of filter to eradicate those complaints which are not really for the monitoring officer at all. They're just people using a process to complain about something relatively unrelated simply because they can, and maybe it's to access media in the process.
John, any comments?
Yeah, I think it all makes a lot of sense, and I think you can sort of sit here and visualize at your own town parish council how you would say, I notice our ones aren't on here, which means they must be really well behaved. Or what I like to think is they sort it out beforehand. And I know that we've had in the last 3 years, every year we have a new chairman, one stayed 2 years, but each one of those was strong enough if there were, and there have been dispute, let's be honest, amongst the councillors themselves, they've actually taken their own form of action, spoken to them and sorted it out, maybe took them off of one committee onto another one in order to rectify it, which I would like to think is a reason that there aren't any on here from ours. And it's a big one. I mean, it's split then north to south anyway. But yeah, they are unique in some ways. Some of them have been there too long, and I will say that. And they'll probably still try and stay there too long, and they form a clique. And I think they all do that. I think we can all say we've probably seen that. It's a trait of human nature. It's not a fault. It's something that happens. And it's an awful lot of conversation. We've tried that before and it didn't work then, so we're not going to do it again. We get a lot of that. But I do think the strength really is in the chairmans of those councils. I really think that they are the ones that need to see this. And maybe they're the ones that they should be saying, look, the reputation of your town and parish council is there for people to see. You are the chairman of that. And you should be the first point of call. Get them together, because often it's just a talk. Find out what the problem is. And if necessary, move one somewhere else to another committee. I'm sure they've all got various committees, so they've got too many. But that is, I think, maybe an intervention and let them see that they are, do Sheringham know they're high up on the list, for argument's sake? They may well be aware of it, I don't know. But I think that they know they've had problems, and I think that that is what's worth looking at.
I agree. I think the chair of each council ought to be aware of this list and where they rank in it. And I suspect in a later list that where I know the situation, they'd be horrified to know they're on a list. And also I fear that the selection process onto parish councils where there is no democratic mandate, it is best mates or can be best mates. And so you select people with your own viewpoint. And very early on in my career, I as a councillor, had to deal with exactly that, where it got totally out of hand. And they were not representing their communities, they were representing themselves. And fortunately, that was dealt with by somebody coming in as a strong chairman. And that seems to be the answer.
To arrive at a position is not so difficult. Ways to resolve that.
Yeah.
I think I'm responding to Councillor Brown's points as well. I think there is some difficulty because it's not all councillor upon councillor complaints, and everyone, whether they're a councillor or not, has that right setting law to make a complaint about another councillor's conduct. I think Councillor Rest has made a comment about, do these parish or town councils know how high up they are on the list? And possibly that is something that we could reasonably do where there's over, say, 3 complaints against a particular council, to write to the clerk and the chairman of that council to let them know that they're high up on the list with this many complaints, and a possible outline of cost of dealing with it. In regard to the Town and Parish Council Forum, it was identified, as we knew, there are various town and parish councils with different codes of conduct. When we adopted or prior to adopting the model code of conduct, I, as monitoring officer, had meetings with other monitoring officers in the area to look at whether we could all adopt this one code of conduct and encourage our town and parish councils to do the same, because it's more understandable and transparent for members of the public, for members who may sit on different councils, triple hatters, for example, but are subject to different codes of conduct. Unfortunately, the timelines and priorities of the different councils meant that we couldn't all come to that agreement, and we continued here with adopting the code of conduct. Something that was mentioned at the Town and Parish Council Forum which I attended, was our request to the chairs and the clerks there to encourage them to consider adopting this code of conduct so that we are moving towards all working under the same code. I think the other point that was raised in regard to can a neighbouring council step in, I think there's a bit of a danger area again for us there, because the legislation, the law requires me to deal with code of conduct complaints. And I've come across a number of situations where it's been dealt with at a parish council and there's been a big follow-up problem.
Nigel.
I think I'd like to make a proposal that we investigate the scope to come up with a filter, a pre-action protocol, if you want to call it that, which would have those benefits. And I'm certainly, I think the more you can do at the front end, at the at the very early stage, nipping it early is the way to do it. And I take your point about not exactly a league table, but letting councils know where they are, sort of, they've had this number and compared with the average, they are well above. But that's historical. And that's fine, just the same.
But it is information, isn't it?
It is information. But what I think I would prefer is to see, I'm not saying we shouldn't do that. I think we can do that and should do that. But I think that I would prefer to see something, as I said, at that really front end that kind of gets in good and early and stops many of those from reaching the stage that they do.
Yeah.
And I'd like to make a proposal that we.
So how would we word the proposal?
Can I just check what it is you're after? Because it's as part of the process, there is an assessment which I conduct, which looks at matters such as how long ago was it? Has the member offered an apology? To see whether it needs to go any further in the first place. So I suppose that is some type of filtering. And before that stage, if it is a complaint actually about how the council rather than a member has behaved, then that complainant will be told it doesn't fall within the code of conduct regime. So I think I just want to check what sort of pre-action, is it a pre-assessment protocol, something even before the assessment that you are proposing, or something?
I can kind of put some words to that, I think. I don't want to be prescriptive about it. I would like this proposal to be one of an investigative proposal. So in other words, we look at the objective being that we reduce the number of complaints that come through to district council level, and that we have benefits which the town and parish councils will derive from that, as well as we derive from that. So the objective is to try and manage these at a lower level than they currently get at the moment. And I think that my proposal therefore would be of a kind of generic nature to investigate early stage interventions that would reduce the number of complaints and have the benefits that we've just talked about.
Do you think we will benefit from having a representative of NALC to input on that, given?
I will leave that to the monitoring officer.
I don't know if this is false memory, but I think at one point you were interested
Yeah,
in
I was interested in having the last meeting I did
because
say
she's new
that,
to the post.
Yeah.
So maybe that is something that would be of assistance to
I don't
gain
want to
their
kick this
input.
can down the road too far,
No.
because these things are cropping up. My feeling is, I mean, can we have a further meeting of this group? Let's say next month or 6 weeks, so we can arrange for now to come in and give us their wisdom as to this proposal, which is part of this proposal actually, because it is looking at the early. So we're looking at, and that would be part of the looking at, would be with an input from now.
Yes, if I may suggest that the proposal is for a piece of work to be done, and for proposals and for interventions, possible interventions to come back to this committee for consideration, having been looked at by those who might be best placed to kind of advise on those.
Absolutely.
And so that's why I say I wouldn't want to be prescriptive about it. I would just simply say, these are the things I think that we ought to be looking at in terms of trying to reduce the numbers and you know, derive those benefits which are there to be had.
So if we actually vote on this now as asking for an investigation into how we can cut down on the amount of complaints, that no further action is required. So yeah.
I just wondered, this documentation and this is a year. This is a year's worth.
Yes,
April
the
21. Have you,
first-
off the top of
But
your
there
head?
is a further list, is there not?
Yes, so there's the extract, which is from the monitoring officer report. So that's,
beg your pardon.
and then there's a more kind of up to
Okay,
date.
I withdraw. Thank you. That's the one. Yeah, I got that, but I didn't see that one. Okay, thank you.
Andrew,
Sorry.
Just elsewhere in the report, Chair, I'm just looking at documents 2, 3, and 4 in the key messages section of the report on page 15. The whistleblowing policy, the members' code of conduct and the protocol, are these all viewable on our council website? You just go into the search engine, put the title in, and it will bring them up. Is that?
Yes, in regard to the whistleblowing policy, you can find that on our intranet. In regard to the member code of conduct, similarly, you can find it on the website, and you can also find it in the Constitution. And that's the same for the protocol. That's the Constitution, and you'd be able to find it on our website.
So good. Just one more point. Looking at the next section, section 4, bullet point number 5, advertisement and recruitment process of 2 independent persons. I noticed the independent person we have currently is not extending their arrangement with us. I don't know if it lasts until next March. But I'm just thinking 2 independent persons, there's obviously cost implications to that. So have resources been allocated to engaging an extra independent person? At what cost?
This was considered. I can't remember which committee, whether it was GRAC. I believe it was. And by law, we need to have at least one independent person, so it's not an option thing. It isn't something that has been a particularly expensive area for us. And it was considered that 2 independent persons rather than one adds resilience. It's often the case that an independent person has more than one independent person role at various councils.
thank you. Because that did come in front of GRAC.
It did indeed, yeah.
Discussing it.
Can I just clarify one other small point? Now I found the back page, which I apologise, I thought I'd read it. I just curiosity really, the first page, which is the year, the 17th of March, it sort of clearly states that the Sheringham Town Council discontinued subject member, no longer a councillor. So, okay, we don't need that. So we assume that, sorry, this is on the page 18. So it just merely says that the discontinued, that the subject member is no longer a councillor. So whether we conclude that the previous parts on here were down to the same person, we don't know. We don't really need to know. It's just on the second page of 27, that particular council is still top of the list in the remaining 6 months. So I think the training element is definitely should be voiced there, but so they again have got 3 of the numbers that are there. They all tend to be on the same subject. Just an observation.
It stands for assessment notice. It should probably be AN, but yes, we've written DN on here.
Yes.
In regard to the councillor resigning, there's no authority to make a decision and impose sanctions because it's yes, it just. I wouldn't wish to comment, even if I could find the information quickly in regard to that.
Okay, so
And Chair, just to confirm, I presume in this list, these are complaints against councillors and not parish council or town council clerks. They're presumably ultra vires this process, are they?
You're absolutely correct. We do get a number of complaints in wishing to complain about clerks, but that's their own internal process. I can't become involved in that. And that's, if you like, that's another sort of filter that we do. I wonder if I could speak a little bit further in regards to the proposal. I think Councillor Dixon is looking to see if we can investigate or investigating early stage interventions. And I know there's been discussion about the officer from NAUC and whether we could maybe meet in, say, 6 weeks' time.
Yeah.
Is it a proposal that we contact her, giving her the information that you're concerned about, the number of complaints that we have, particularly in regard to some councils, so that she's put on notice about what she may need to look at?
you would be content with that, Councillor Cooks? No, but I yeah. So yes, I think that is yes, and do we need to put this to the vote? Well, yeah.
And that's the second line down where there's a question mark in the hearing column. And I just wonder where is that particular matter in the process?
That's currently being investigated. So it's gone through our assessment process, and the finding was that it needs to go for an investigation for an investigator to consider, in their view, whether there has or hasn't been a breach of the code. That's still underway. So
I guess it's the date that gives me some cause for concern here. It's nearly 11 months round, and I wonder if there's a reason for that.
I can't remember what the reason is. I could have a further look, but I have spoken to my colleagues today, and that is being dealt with as a matter of priority at the moment.
Mr. Chairman, that's one other aspect that kind of gives me cause for concern. The longer these things run and fester, the more they're likely to propagate in other ways. And so I something of this age, I really do question as to why it should take so long.
Yeah, as I say, I don't know the full details of this, but sometimes through no fault of the investigator, there's various information that's requested. It takes a while. They need to speak to witnesses. And it is often the case that it isn't a really quick process. Along with that, I would say, to be quite frank about the situation, is that with regards to town and parish councils, the ability to impose meaningful sanctions at the end of the whole process is very limited. And with a busy legal department, this isn't always put as a priority matter.
So when is it decided? When would it be decided that it merits coming before a panel of this committee? When is that break-off point?
Well, matters where an assessment notice is sent out with no further action considered by the monitoring officer, those matters wouldn't come before you other than you being notified in such a way or at the annual monitoring officer report. Where there's an investigation which finds there to be no breach at the end of it, I will look at the report, and if I consider that that is a reasonable finding, that would also conclude the matter. And then there's that other area where there's been an investigation and the investigator has found that there has, in their view, been a breach. Then, if it's something that is serious and needs to come before the standards committee, then a standards hearing is arranged. However, if it's a matter that could be resolved by way of apology, for example, if it's a low-level breach, even though a breach has been found, then I would liaise with the independent person to get their view as to whether that is an appropriate resolution of the matter. So it's...
I mean, I do know the issue at one parish council that we received notification that it was going to one of the complainant's solicitors. And that seems quite a serious occasion. I was surprised at that. I know that one of the people involved is no longer on the parish council, but I was surprised that we never got sort of resolution on that.
That was a matter where there was no further action, and there was a subsequent, without going into too much detail, there was a subsequent dispute from the subject member in regard to the way that the matter had been dealt with, and I think that was why there was that intervention. However, from the council's point of view, that was dealt with completely appropriately.
Brilliant. Thank you. Right. So we get back. We're going to vote for this. Okay. Do I have a proposer? Nigel Dixon. Do I have a seconder? Andrew. And all those in favour? That's unanimous.
And would that be for a date in about 6 weeks'
Yes,
time to be
about 6
agreed?
weeks' time for input from now. Lovely, on that. Right. Sorry, going back to find my 9, notification of request for dispensation, and I believe you have something to say on this matter.
So I later.
The next matter, sorry. Right,
It does relate to the.
yeah,
next
sorry,
matter.
we need to do this first and then that. Okay,
Yes.
fully understand.
Members will note that agenda item 10, is it agenda item 10? No. Agenda item,
It's page 23, I think, yeah. Yeah.
there's one in particular.
It is,
Yes,
yeah, it is
yeah,
10,
10.
yeah.
Yeah, members will note that agenda item 10 relates to a member of this council who's applying for a dispensation. The procedure that took place was that the member wrote an email requesting for the Standards Committee, as is the requirement under our constitution, to consider the dispensation. Having looked at her request, I perhaps in a proactive way, I thought that perhaps her request didn't completely capture all the information that a Standards Committee may need to be aware of to be able to make the decision. And so I have prepared a template form, which I subsequently sent to the member in question who has completed it, but it's not on the paper, so I'll speak to that later on, to make sure that we had all of the information from her if she wasn't able to attend the committee. So this template form has all the information that you may need from a member asking for a dispensation, and I've also attached an information for members application for dispensations sheet, which gives the information that they may need to consider in completing the form, and that members of the Standards Committee could refer to when considering an application. Something that I haven't added on options considered, but members may also wish to look at, is that the Standards Committee meets fairly infrequently, and there could potentially be a glut of requests for dispensations at some moment in time. So I know that this particular councillor has waited some time to make this application. So I wonder whether something else that members may wish to consider is whether you would wish to delegate applications for dispensations to myself, but in consultation with the chair of the Standards Committee, so that if there was any disagreement, then the matter could then go to the Standards Committee. So a possible third recommendation for you to consider. So you could consider adopting or not the template and the guidance and the possibility of delegation.
I did look at this earlier. I mean, the councillor in question no doubt had the reasons for dispensation already in her list, or in that person's list of interests. Is that correct?
Yes, whilst for agenda item 9, we're not actually considering that request for the dispensation. I've alluded to it because I felt that was more information. It wasn't straightforward to a councillor requesting a dispensation, what information they needed to provide to me in the Standards Committee. And hence I've I've prepared this possible procedure for members to consider whether they would wish to implement it. And I've added something today, which is for you to consider whether you would also like to consider delegating such decisions to me, but with consultation with the chairman of the Standards Committee. So this agenda item is about adopting or not that template, the guidance, and the question of delegation.
Okay. Any questions? Andrew.
Well, firstly, let me say that I do welcome the introduction of a template. Not least selfishly, because anything that makes the situation easier to pursue and to complete and submit has got to be welcome, rather than it being an open house, as it were. I think the point was made somewhere that members weren't quite sure what information to submit, and obviously the template does help with that massively. I guess what we're looking at is a situation sort of akin to our planning system, where decisions are made by officers under delegation, and obviously more complicated or contentious matters are referred to the development committee. So perhaps that's the sort of relationship we're looking at here. In that sense, it's a system that could work, a system of delegation. I sense frustration among members, particularly if they are, say, on a committee that meets monthly, like overview and scrutiny, and these issues are there, and they're having to declare interests and step out of meetings and so on. That it's obviously beneficial to have a decision on this in a timely manner, and clearly it's coming to the Standards Committee. I mean, when was our last meeting? It was months and months ago. It's not really working, is it? So I think whether it's restricted to chair and a monitoring officer, or I don't know, or whether anybody else in addition should be involved, I don't know. But certainly something I think would be welcome to as an alternative to it just being referred to the Standards Committee on an infrequent basis. Is my initial reaction.
Nigel and then John.
I agree with Councillor Brown that there is a need for this, and so I welcome it as a template. We do need to be far more responsive, because I know you neatly described the time period as some time, but I would far rather hear how many months that's been, and that is measured in months, isn't it? So I think we need to kind of be accurate about this, and waiting months for a decision of that sort is not on. It's not the kind of real time or almost real time that we are capable of working to. So we definitely need this, and we definitely need something which is responsive. And yes, in this particular case, it has affected the workings of Overview and Scrutiny Committee, quite frankly.
Yeah.
It's excluded one member, and I'm not going to say whether that's right or wrong. I'm simply saying that the impact is that there has been light of one member with regard to that topic.
Actually, I will say something about that. I feel that we cannot expect members to be divorced from all things that affect, and you could say that the member we are talking about had an insight which would have assisted our view, well, our view and our decisions. And I think perhaps that was a opportunity missed, possibly.
With regard to the delegation, I'm wondering whether there isn't another way perhaps that we might do this instead of placing all this responsibility and the fact that there is very few of us.
Yeah. I think the details, if emailed to each member.
Precisely.
And then the consensus gathered. John, you'd agree with that? So we're all agreed that we need this template. The delegation shouldn't rest purely on my very narrow shoulders, but be spread.
So can I just check? So it would be delegation to the monitoring officer in consultation with the standards committee rather than the chair of the standards committee.
I mean, an email would be secure enough, would it? Yeah, with a timeline, and if you don't respond, you're ignored. Yeah, otherwise we fall back into. So I put that. I look for a thank you very much, John. Thank you very much, and all in favour? That's.
So can I check that's to adopt the template form, the guidance notes and the delegation?
Yeah. Where are we? Sorry, find my. And we have. Well, that was 11, wasn't it? So we go to. Oh, that was 10. Sorry, I got confused. So it's agenda 11. 10. Agenda item 10. Right. Yes, please.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I
I haven't got numbers on it.
I think it's only mentioned at the beginning of the
Oh,
papers.
right.
That's what's thrown us, I think. In regard to agenda item 10, I've referred to some information in the previous agenda item, and this is Councillor Holliday's request for the committee to consider a dispensation to participate in further debates and decisions relating to second homes and holiday lets in the district. As mentioned, she did originally send me an email, and I did ask her to complete a form, which I will give to members, and I will, because this is public session, I will also give the information publicly. So I requested that Councillor Holliday fill in this form. She's requesting the decision-making body in respect of which she requires a dispensation is the Overview and Scrutiny Committee, Full Council, Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Group. She's a member of ONS, a member of Full Council and a substitute for the Planning Policy and Built Heritage Working Group. The business for which she requires a dispensation, it's not a specific agenda item, but it's debate and vote on council tax discounts, including a change to discount on second homes at Full Council on the 16th of November, and subsequently on debates on decisions on second homes and holiday lets in the district. The details of her interest in the business is that she's an owner of a holiday let in Cly. It's declared on her register of interest as a disclosable pecuniary interest. She requests the dispensation until May 2023, and it is to participate and to vote. She sets out that she would like to request dispensation from the Standards Committee to participate in further debates and decisions on second homes and holiday lets in the district. She says, my village and ward have a high percentage of second homes and holiday lets. I'm very conversant with issues that this causes. I have constituents who are disadvantaged by and constituents who benefit from second homes and holiday lets. My position as member is to represent the majority view of the community. You will see from my responses to the local plan consultation that I have represented my community's position re second homes and holiday lets. And you will see from my record at Development Committee, I support the community view where possible. As far as considering whether any future NNDC decisions affect my interest to a greater extent than they affect the majority of inhabitants, there do seem to be others in the district who also hold strong views on second homes and holiday lets, people with adult children wanting to buy properties and renters, etc. There's also an argument that the views and input from someone with a holiday let is useful to include for balance. And thank you for considering my request for dispensation. So that is Councillor Holliday's request information. I could give you some further information on the structure of your decision, but I'll leave you to.
Can I ask, with this dispensation, if the subject of holiday homes was on the agenda for instance, an overview and scrutiny committee, Councillor, we're naming, yeah, Councillor Halliday could declare an interest, but still participate in the debate?
That's exactly what you are considering doing. So she, as she's mentioned, she owns a holiday let that's disclosed as a pecuniary interest. And where there's at those committee and full council that she's mentioned in her request, she's saying that there could be an item of business that either directly relates to her pecuniary interest, or it could be considered as another interest which affects her in theory more than other people in the district. So I understand that there was some previous discussions with regard to working groups in regard to arranging an investigation and getting some data and information about holiday homes. But I think the argument that Councillor Holliday recognises is that just as there may be an argument that she may have an interest in the holiday let with reference to the item of business that may be discussed, there may be someone who, say, wishes to buy a property or rent a property in the area, who has children who are trying to get on the property ladder or rent, and so they may also have an equal interest. So members need to consider this with reference also to the guidance that has been prepared in item number 9. And you'll probably be looking at it, you know, given the high number of holiday homes in the district, would it be in the interests and in the importance of bringing balance into the matter? Would it be appropriate to grant a dispensation in this case? If so, for how long? We've seen Councillor Holliday is asking until May 2023.
Well, yeah. No. Right. Anybody wish to comment? I mean, I stand by what I said earlier, is that I believe Councillor Halliday has an insight that would have added to our debate, and as such I feel that that should be recognised as long as councillor Halliday declares the interest at the meeting on each specific occasion. Is that?
Can I check then, looking at the reasons for dispensation, it would appear, or is it that you're considering granting the dispensation because it's in the interest of people living in the authority's area?
Yes,
That's specifically it, or
that is
it's
specifically
otherwise
it. It
appropriate?
is to the
Is that
advantage of the people living in the area. There is no question.
And in a moment you'll vote, but I just want to check, are you happy with the length of time that it's for discussion and voting and the committees that she's detailed on the form?
Yes, yeah, all of that. Okay,
So I think you need to vote on it.
okay, so can I have a proposer? Nigel, seconder, John, all those in favour? Unanimous. Right, I think that brings us to a juddering halt, according to my agenda.
You still got, sorry, there's still item 11, any other business to include an update on recent standards complaints. I think you covered that partly during the monitoring officer's report, but just to note, the second item there is a verbal update on the recruitment of an independent person. I believe the job advertisement was delayed during the morning period, but that is now live. So we should be receiving applications for that soon.
Okay, fine. And is that an interview process for the standards committee, or is that an interview process as they are independent?
I think it will be the yourself, myself, and one other person.
One
You
other
will
person.
definitely need to have some input into that.
Right, yeah. And Andrew.
Yeah, just before we end the meeting, Chair, I just wanted to go back to the issue of the online reporting form for members' interests, and just to ask if we can if we can just take a view on this and make our thoughts clear to if this is held up in the IT department at the moment, with the approach of the elections next year, that we try and accelerate the process and give it some greater priority, with a view to bringing this into effect online and interactive for members as soon as possible.
Yes.
I'm just wondering if I have support for that across the
We can all
across the
agree with that.
committee.
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you, Chair.
So I mean, this page 27 and 28. Do we have anything else to discuss on that? I apologise, I've just found it.
I think I probably discussed it in the round when we
Rounds,
were
yeah.
speaking earlier, unless members have specific questions.
So the next date, we will try and have a date in approximately 6 weeks' time, Matt.
Yes, so it'd be towards the end of November.
Yeah, so we can have a delegate from NALC. No, fine. All right. Thank you very much indeed, and see you in 6 weeks' time. Thank you.